Today on History's Tech, we're actually going to be starting a series on tanks. And I figured what better way to start a series on tanks than look at the different types of tanks. Now, if you're looking for the history and origin of the tanks, please look at my playlist. I do have some videos on early history of tanks and even different classes of tanks, such as the main battle tank. But specifically, I'm going to be focusing on light, medium, heavy, and super heavy tanks. But let's go ahead and get started on the first in the series, the light tank. Now, the story of the light tank actually comes during World War I when we see the development of the tank itself. Now, early tanks are basically just tractors with armor plating on them. And as time progressed, these tanks started getting larger and larger because speed really wasn't a factor at the time. They needed them to be utilized as a means of protection and to attack fortifications. So, for the most part, every nation involved in tank development during the First World War is going to just start building bigger and bigger tanks, with the exception of one nation. The French, realizing that they already had the industry in place with the automotive industry, could build a smaller, cheaper to produce, faster tank. And this became known as the Renault FT. And they basically went to Renault, the car manufacturer, and had them build this very small tank. And there are many that believe that the Renault FT is the first true modern tank. And this basically becomes that the layout is what we see in a modern day tank. Driver at the front, main armament, and a fully rotating turret at the top, engine at the rear, versus the box tanks that came before it. Now, while the French were the only ones to truly explore the light tank during the First World War, during the interwar period is where we really start to see a exploration of different classes of tanks. And the most popular one at the start was actually the tankette. Now, the tankette, while resembling a small tank, is not really technically considered a tank, mainly because it has no type of tank armament. It is typically armed with a machine gun. And this was actually rather popular because military budgets after World War I were rather small. And so the idea to use the tankette to kind of explore tank operations, maybe even practice with them, was very popular. But development begins to change in 1928 when Vickers develops what's known as the Vickers 6-ton tank. And this is basically a new type of design going back to the idea of a lighter tank. Now, the British government ended up evaluating the 6-ton tank. And while it did have advantages, it was faster, had better suspension and maneuverability, they didn't really like it. So they actually rejected the design. However, multiple countries actually loved the design. Greece, Poland, Bolivia, Siam, now Thailand, Finland, Portugal, China, and Bulgaria all ordered copies of the 6-ton tank. And in fact, the design was so popular with both Poland and the Soviet Union that they became the basis for each of their own tanks. For the Soviet Union, it was the T-26. And for the Polish, it was the 7TP tank. From there, we'll see the continuous growth and evolution of the light tank throughout the interwar period. And we'll see various nations testing different configurations, different usage for them, trying to find the most effective means of developing the light tank. Now, the only country that really didn't show much interest in the development of the light tank during this time period is going to be the United States. And they only produced a few hundred of them, mostly based on the Christie design that would be later influential in other light tanks. Now, the development of the light tank continued through World War II. And in fact, when the war starts, every major power involved in the war will have some type of light tank. The British will have their light tank Mark 1 through 6, the French Renault R35, the Type 95 Hago light tank, a personal favorite of mine. The Soviet T-26 will make a reappearance, and even the American M2 light tank. Now, interestingly, two tanks that are going to emerge from this will probably be more famous than any else. And that's going to be the Soviet BT tank, which is actually the basis for the ever famous T-34 medium tank, and the German Panzer I and IIs, which will obviously be more famous for the later Panzer series of tanks. Now, as the war progresses, we're going to see continuous developments. The British will come up with better, more improved versions of their light tank. We'll see the United States take on their M2, becoming the M3, later becoming the M5, and then eventually making its way to the M24 Chaffee. Now, while the start of the Cold War was the signal to the end of the multiple classes of tanks, it really wasn't the end for the light tank, as it's going to continuously be utilized and deployed for roles such as amphibious reconnaissance, support for airborne units, and deployed as a rapid intervention unit. Now, properly utilizing and deploying these new lighter tanks became crucial for Cold War tactics, whether it be the ability to deploy high speed amphibious tanks or be able to drop tanks out of an aircraft. Utilizing these new light tanks in multiple fields of battle became crucial for Cold War tactics. And while it could be very easily seen that post Cold War there was no longer a need for the light tank, as the usage of IFVs and main battle tanks could supplement this, instead, the role of the light tank has been expanding in the 21st century. The modern light tank is even supplementing the main battle tank in an expeditionary role or in a situation where major threats have been neutralized and heavy armor is actually a detriment to the operation. So a light tank is much more feasible and economical to use. And we're even seeing a more modular design being deployed, allowing them to reconfigure these tanks for multiple roles, variations, making it much easier for smaller armies to deploy and purchase them and utilize them better. But there you have it, a look at the light tank, a tank designed for quicker, lighter operations that kind of came about by accident during the First World War. And from there, its role has ever expanded. And while it could have easily been replaced, instead it's being updated, upgraded, and improved for the 21st century. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you on the next time.